I took the fall for my brother and ended up serving 2 years in prison. While inside, I unexpectedly saved the daughter of the richest man in town. As a token of gratitude, he gave me 100 million. After my release, the first thing I did was to call my father, eager to surprise him. But as soon as he heard my voice, he hung up. I thought something terrible had happened at home and rushed back. Just as I reached the door, I overheard my brother's wife, Greta Kessler, complaining, "Of all days, she had to get out today," making me skip my prenatal checkup just to rush and transfer the property. My mother replied, "It's for your own good. With her prison record, finding a job will be tough, and getting married will be even tougher. She might just end up staying here and fighting you for the house." Greta snorted. "Let her rent a place. I'm not living with an ex-con." Listening to their conversation felt like a punch to the gut. My heart ached. Wasn't my mom the one who used to call me her little sweetheart? Hadn't Greta always said she saw me as her own sister? How did everything change so suddenly? The door before me was the one I'd dreamt about for 2 long years. But now, standing in front of it felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. After taking a moment to compose myself, I finally knocked. My mother, Melanie Kessler, opened the door, looking surprised. "Nina, you're back? I was just about to send your dad to pick you up." She gave me a once-over and forced a concerned look. "You've lost weight over these 2 years. It must have been tough. If only I hadn't overheard their conversation. If only her concern had been genuine. How wonderful that would be." I managed a bittersweet smile. "No worries. Taxis are convenient now." With that, I stepped inside. Greta immediately rushed over and sprayed me with alcohol until the bottle was empty. Only then did she look at me. "Don't take it the wrong way. I'm just cleansing you of bad luck." She told me not to overthink, but her disdain was written all over her face. I knew Greta despised me for being an ex-convict, but she must have forgotten. I went to prison for her and my brother, James Kessler. Without saying a word, I walked straight to my room. When I opened the door, I found it filled with clutter, and none of my belongings were in sight. Turning to Melanie, I asked, "Mom, what happened here?" She hesitated, looking uncomfortable. "You've been gone for so long, and the house is small with lots of stuff, so we stored everything in your room." "And my things?" I pressed. Melanie looked down. Her guilt was evident. "Sold or thrown away. They're all gone." My heart sank again. "Mom, I was in prison, not dead. Was it necessary to clear out all my things?" When my father, Seamus Kessler, heard this from the sofa, he casually said, "Nina, Greta is 5 months pregnant and needs space for baby stuff. The house is cramped. Your things weren't needed anymore, so we got rid of them." His words hit me like a ton of bricks. My father used to love organizing my things, saying he wanted to create a collection of my most meaningful belongings to give me as a wedding gift someday. Why didn't he care that they were all gone now?
"Where am I supposed to stay?" I asked. Melanie pulled out $200 and tossed it on the table carelessly as if she were giving money to a beggar. "Here, take this. Find a motel or rent a place. It's up to you." I forced a bitter smile. "What about James? Does he feel the same way?" Just then, my brother, James Kessler, emerged from the bathroom. Without hesitation, he said, "Nina, you're my sister. Of course, I'm on your side. If you want to stay here, I'll clear the room for you." It seemed James still cared about me. I nodded with relief. "All right, I'll stay for a while." But as soon as I said that, James' expression froze. He stood there, looking at me, but made no move to clean the room. I stared back, puzzled. At this time, Greta walked up to me, her voice sharp. "Janina, have you lost your mind in prison? How can you be so inconsiderate? Can't you see how cramped the house is? Even if we clear out the room, it should be for the baby. You're an adult now. How can you shamelessly insist on staying here? Have some sense." I felt sorrowful and replied hoarsely, "Greta, this is my home. Isn't it normal for me to stay for a few days? Your home. This house is under James' name now. He's married, and you're 30 years old. How can you still want to live with your brother?" Her disdain was no longer hidden, her eyes filled with contempt. I looked at James. He pressed his lips together, looking everywhere but at me. I turned to my mother, but she just stared back, her expression dark, offering no support. My father puffed away on his cigarette, acting as if none of this concerned him. There I stood, awkward and helpless, realizing their rush to property transfer wasn't just to avoid a potential dispute. They wanted to use it as an excuse to kick me out. My heart ached with 1,000 tiny stings. Looking at my family, I asked incredulously, "Did I do something wrong? Why have you all changed so suddenly?" For the first time, I felt like an outsider in my own home. Before I went to prison, everyone treated me well. Why had everything changed the moment I was released? Without hesitation, Greta responded, "Janina, before, you could make money and support the family, so we all got along. But now, you're just an ex-con. Finding a decent job or a husband will be nearly impossible. In your situation, what can you do but leech off us? Why should we still treat you well?" My heart sank, and I asked painfully, so, because I'm no longer useful and might be a burden, you don't care about me anymore? Nina, it's not our fault. Melanie looked at me and finally said, another mouth to feed isn't something we can afford. You're better off finding a place to rent and taking care of yourself instead of being a burden to us. I'm a burden? I looked at Melanie with a pained expression. Mom, you were the ones who begged me in tears to take the fall for James. You said if I did, I'd be the savior of this family, and you'd repay me no matter what. Now, I just got out and haven't even had a sip of water at home, and suddenly, I'm a burden? I've given so much for this family. I handed over all my wages, contributed to buying this house, and even served 2 years in prison for James. Doesn't that entitle me to a room in my own home? My voice was hoarse, and I felt utterly wronged. James said, Nina, I know you're upset, but do you think it was easy for us these past 2 years? Having a convict in the family brought shame on all of us. People point and whisper wherever we go. Who knows what people will say about us if you stay here? Can't you think about us for once? The brother I sacrificed everything to protect finally revealed his true feelings. To him, I was now just a burden, the reason for their shame. All my sacrifices were reduced to a joke. I looked at him with deep disappointment and said coldly, James Kessler, don't forget, the one who should have been a convict is you. The one who shamed the family is you. If you really cared about the family's reputation, you should have confessed from the start. Instead, you let me take the fall, and now you have the audacity to blame me for not thinking about you. 2 years ago, James and Greta were speeding and driving in the wrong direction with my car when they hit and killed someone. My parents came to me immediately. They said James had a weak heart and had finally managed to get married. If he went to prison, not only would he lose his marriage, but his life might be at risk. They cried and begged me to take the blame for him. They promised that the whole family would repay me generously once I got out. I didn't do it for any reward. I did it out of love for my parents and genuine care for my brother. I sacrificed myself, went to prison for him, sold my car, drained my savings, lost my job, paid the compensation, and endured all the insults. But I never expected my wholehearted sacrifice to be met with utter betrayal and contempt. I don't understand. Isn't blood supposed to be thicker than water? Why does family loyalty become so insignificant when faced with personal gain? James heard my words, and his face turned dark with displeasure. He retorted, I've already thanked you for taking the fall. What more do you want from me? This house is under my name now, and Greta will give birth in a few months. There's not enough room. You need to move out. We can't afford to support an idler. In his eyes, 2 years in prison for him was worth only a single thank you. Asking for more made me the unreasonable one. Melanie chimed in, Nina, don't you get it? A woman's fate is to marry and have children, not live off her family. We were hoping to marry you off to a good man and get some money, but now, as an ex-convict, no one will want you. Letting you stay here is already us considering old-time sake. Greta added, exactly. You've been to prison, so you'll be poor forever. If we let you stay, you'd drain us dry.